Hello, and welcome to our weekly LinkedIn Live leadership series, Voices of Leadership. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Eastwood, the host and the CEO of E=Y. Each week, we explore the fascinating world of leadership, featuring voices from various generations, industries, and backgrounds. A team's job is to deliver the results. It's the job of the leader is to help make sure that happens. And there's really a repeatable formula to help leaders. And it's the E3 Leadership Code. It's about expressing the end vision, engaging your people, executing with precision, all powered by emotions. However, how every leader shows up is different. We're not all the same. There's no mold. So we love to hear from leaders to hear how they show up, how they like to lead, they like to influence people. And that's the point of these sessions, is to hear from fabulous leaders. So let's make this interactive, sorry. I'm going to introduce our guest in a second, but please feel free in the comments. Let us know where you're dialing in from. If you have questions, let us know. If you want to network, go ahead. It would be great to hear from you all. So now I get to introduce our guest today. Today's guest is someone that I instantly connected with. And, we just chatted and went on and on and on. And it's not because of her title, but it was about her presence. Bridgette is the Chief People and Culture Officer of the Academy of Motion Pictures and Arts and Science, where she's carrying out a powerful mission from the Academy's CEO to bring together the people and culture teams across both the Academy and its museum into one unified function. And Bridgette's the perfect person to lead that charge. Why? Because she listens like few others I've met. She calls herself the people detective. And I love that. That got me when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, Bridgette. And she's someone who hears what others miss and helps people feel seen. So welcome, Bridgette. So excited to have you here. I'd love to hear from you. Please tell the audience your journey. How did you get here? And, also we'll get into the people detective thing as well.
Definitely. Well, first of all, Kathy, thank you for the privilege of being able to have this conversation today with you. As you said, we instantly connected, not because of title, but we find as we have progressed in our careers that it's not about title, it's about presence, and people can sense if you are authentic. And I sense that about you, and so it was an easy connection. But in terms of how I got here, I mentioned to you when we initially spoke that when I was a kid, I watched on Sunday night The Wonderful World of Disney. And although I didn't know what manifestation was back then, I understood what it felt to believe in something beyond what I saw. And especially when I heard the theme song, When You Wish Upon a Star. It
Mhm.
wasn't about the message, about the music, it was more about the message that dreams can become real. That if you believe in your dreams and your vision and you put action toward it, you can have the things that you want in life. And so for me, the possibilities became reality because I was just a girl from Fairfield, Alabama that dreamed of the possibilities of my life. And I put action toward it. And now I can say that my reality is that I have the privilege of serving in the role as the first Chief People and Culture Officer at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. If that's not manifestation, I don't know what is, Kathy.
That's amazing. And just all the words that you use in that, Bridgette, that I love is like, I have the privilege, right? I
Yes.
had a dream and I made it happen.
Right.
And, it really is our point of view and our mindset that
Hmm.
help make things happen.
Definitely. I before I start my day, I prime myself with intentional actions. I set the foundation for having a positive attitude. So I listen to positive motivational podcasts, master classes. I journal, I write. But then I remember what my parents taught me when I was growing up, when I was facing challenges in life. They always told me to remember who you are. They reminded me you're wilder. So regardless of what impacts you, it's not that you're going to rise in spite of, you're going to rise because of it. And that's always been what I've tried to keep in my mind is that regardless of what happens, it's my mindset, it's my foundation of what I think about it, right? And that allows me to stay focused on my vision, on my why. Because if you got a why, your actions and decisions are going to what leads you to what you need to do.
I love that. And that why I think is so powerful. And that's what drives us. And that's actually, in the E3 leadership code that I talk about, that why is that first thing, right?
Yes.
So when you're leading a team, do you find you bring that in an organization or with people you're working with, is pulling out their why, whether it's the organization's purpose or the individual's purpose?
Right. Well, I like to combine both because organizations exist for a reason. That's the why. And every job that's created is created to support that why. So once you understand that, every goal that you develop as a department and as an employee goes back to that original why. When I collaborate with my team members and they bring me goals, I first want to know what's the why and does it tie back to the overall why of the academy? Because if it's not, it's a nice to do, and we can put that in the parking lot for right now. But if we can focus on the why of the academy and how our roles play into that, then we can achieve many things. And the other thing to do with that is to empower your team members to know that whatever they got hired to do, they're the business owner. So they got to own those goals. They got to own that why and let you know as their leader, their partner, how you can support them and give them the tools and the resources. But own what you do. And once you own it and master it and level that up, you can help other people see the possibilities because you know your potential and what's possible.
I love how you bring the personal side, your journey of getting here, right? And
Mhm.
defining that into the business and leading with that as how you inspire, motivate, but really drive accountability as well in the
Right.
teams. Is that right?
That's what I really focus on, regardless of what role that I have. I originally mentioned to you I didn't start off in human resources. I was a software specialist because I didn't want to work with people, right? If you
Mhm.
were not technical, I just didn't get you, right? And one day my boss came in and said, "Well, Bridgette, I need you to go in and teach the people in the bank how to use your loan software." And I'm like, "Sandy, no, I don't engage with non-technical people. That's why I'm a software specialist." And she said, "Well, you're going to have to." So I went back to college at night, majored in HR, with a minor in psych to learn how to engage with non technical people. But once I opened up my perspective, I saw that programming and connecting with people and accomplishing a goal were all related. You start with a big picture, then you break it down in individual action steps, you tie it back to the why and work with people to make it happen. And that's how you accomplish goals.
I love it. The program, yeah, coming from a software developer and then
Yeah,
becoming a chief people officer. I came from, I think we talked about, I came as a CPA and ending up on the people side of things.
right.
Right? And it's
Right.
that programmatic thing that we're trying to get to the end result. And how do
Yes.
we get there? It's people
Mhm.
first, right? If we don't have the
People
people
first.
forward,
Right.
it's not going to happen.
And for me, regardless of the role that I've had in HR, whether it's recruiter up to where I am now, I've always seen my role as helping leaders and employees focus on the human component, the people component of the business. Because before you can do anything, before you can lead, act, decide, you got to have the why, and you got to recognize you can't do it by yourself. It takes people, it takes collaboration. And that's what I have found that has helped me to be successful is because I've taken the big thinking of a software specialist, and then I recognize in order to accomplish those individual steps, I needed to partner with people to make it happen.
I love it. So we've got some questions coming in, and
Oh,
one of them
great.
actually is, you're the chief people officer. So
Mhm.
what does a day in the life of look like for you?
It's no such thing as a day in life, right? That's why I prepare myself, my mindset. Of course, I always start out with an intention. I make a list, but because my role is about people and culture, when things impact that, an employee says, "Hey, Bridgette, I have a concern," then I have to stop, drop, and roll and pivot and address that concern. Because if I don't, that impacts the culture, right? Our individual actions create the collective results of everybody's employee experience. So I have to reprioritize and make the people happen. And then in between that, make my work happen. Right.
And is that work, some of that work is the strategy of the academy, right? And
Right.
helping them deliver on their results because the
Mhm.
people make it
Right. And I use the people component and tie it back to developing my strategy. Right. The academy has a mission, it has a strategic plan. So when I wrote my 5-year plan, everything tied back to that. And then when my daily actions, while I'm dealing with the reactive, the proactive component, I have to remove myself from the chaos, go back to my why, which is that strategy, the things that I got to do to bring that employee experience, that employee engagement back to that why.
Yeah, I love it. And as you're talking, right, and you were shaking your head when I was giving the E3 leadership code, it's exactly what you're doing. I got the strategy. I got to make sure the people are on board, but you're executing. And I hear the action and the execution quite a
Mhm.
bit.
Yeah.
So
And you have to have both, Kathy. You got to have the vision and the why, but you got to execute on it.
I agree. I always talk about that. Like I talk about it as the three-legged stool where you need to
Mm.
have the why, you need to have the people bought into it and the execution. And
Yeah.
then the top part, and I'm gonna, do you agree on this one, is really about the emotional intelligence. Showing up, caring
Oh,
about the people.
if you don't have emotional intelligence, you're going to be reactionary. When you become reactionary, you lose your power, regardless of your level, right? And not power from the negative sense, but the power to know that you are disciplined to know that this is just a moment in time. This is a chapter, it's not the book. But your actions, that one action can destroy everything you build in terms of that foundation of building trust. So it's so important that regardless of our level, but especially as leaders, that we take a moment to pause. Within that moment of pause, it gives you the opportunity to reflect so that you can ask the clarifying questions. You can listen deeply and listen for not only the truth of what's not being said, but also the opportunities in that silence. And that gives you the knowledge that you need of ideas that you need to put into action to address what's happening.
Big takeaway there, listen deeply. Is this where the people detective comes into play?
That is, my tagline came from saying that I'm a people detective because it's my job not to just listen to what you say, but also to listen what you don't say so that I can identify solutions to address your concerns. So for me, believe it or not, Kathy, I'm a very introverted person.
That software engineer one gave it
Yeah,
away
I'm
really
very introverted, but for my work, I have to be extroverted.
right.
So
Yep.
for me, I have to remind myself, pause, Bridgette, listen,
Hmm.
because in that, I'm going to be able to have some humility. Sometimes when you pause and listen, you're inviting feedback. And when you invite feedback, you invite truth.
Hmm.
And when you find out through that listening that your intent had a different impact as an employee, as a leader, that tells you it's time to course correct. But you only can have that if you deeply listen. You can't listen to respond. You got
Yeah.
to listen to understand.
Yeah, that listen to understand rather than listen to respond. I was having a dialogue with someone earlier today and we were talking about their interaction and he's like, I said, "You realize you're responding to something, your ego was hurt." He's like,
Right,
"No, it wasn't." And I'm like, "Think about it." And he went, "Oh, wait a minute, you're absolutely right."
right.
And we all bring a ton of fear,
Yeah,
uncertainty, doubt, and ego to the table, right?
right. And for me, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes as an employee. I make mistakes as a leader. But what I have come to know in my 30 plus year of career in HR is that you have to have the authentic aspect of yourself to apologize,
Mm,
regardless of your level. And the higher you are, the more you're going to be apologizing. And to let people know too that just like they're an employee, I'm an employee. I have
mhm.
my days where I'm wondering, how am I going to do that? How am
Yep.
I going to be able to deal with this decision that I know is going to impact so many people? then I have to pause and reflect on the human component of it and say, even though this is hard, how can I help support them? How can I partner with them and let them know, again, this is just a chapter in your life. It's not the book, it's not the end of the story. And
Yeah,
this is what I'm going to do to help support you.
I love that. Is that people detective side of it as well as understanding where they're coming from, what experiences they have, and what's going on in their personal lives as well?
That is, part of being a people detective. And I learned that from being a software specialist because I had to understand what it is that I was coding. What are you trying to achieve? Right. So when
Mm,
I got into the people part of it, before I can say, I think this is the best practice, this is what you need to do, I got to understand what's impacting them and how so, and what's their why, what they want to achieve. Then I'm able to then determine what is a possible solution. Because sometimes you try things and then you have to course correct. And I don't promise that it's going to be nirvana. I let people know some things, yeah, it's going to stop immediately because it's not aligned with our values. Other things is going to take time. But if you work with me, we can make it happen. And again, it goes back to individual action creates collective results. We got to do our part, and then the collective results are going to show up.
is that a hard concept sometimes to get across to people? Do you find they struggle because they think it should all be working a certain way, or, a company has a responsibility to them and don't think about what they have to bring to the table?
That's always been a challenge, that people first start off with, how does this impact me? You
Mm,
know, and that's human nature. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but then in a work environment, we have to also focus on that business exists for a reason. Your role exists for a reason. I
mm.
need you to accomplish the things that are defined in that position description. But while we're doing that, let's talk about what your professional development goals are, how we can incorporate that to help you to be the best at what you're doing now, and then help you towards your goals in the future. The other component of that is leaders, especially, we got to be not afraid to develop people. I hear
Mm.
a lot of leaders say, hey, but what if they leave? My fear is if they don't develop and they stay.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So for me in practice, what I ask every team member to do that's part of my team is they have to have a power hour of learning in their schedule every week,
Mm.
intentional learning. They get to choose what that is, and is related to their job, something that's going to help them to expand their knowledge and experience to level up. And then they let me know in their end of week work log tracker how what they learned and how they plan to apply it, right? So it's not learning to be learning, it's about intentional learning. How am I going to implement it to be the best at what I do, to benefit the organization and to help those stakeholders that I serve?
I love it. So I'm going to challenge you. Do you do a power hour every week as well?
I do a power hour plus some more, right? Because again, the higher that I've gone in my career, the more I've realized, the more I have to learn.
Yep.
And, for me, beyond the learning, I focus on every day before I leave out the house. I, again, remind myself who I am, but I remind myself to be authentic and to be real. When I first start working, I'm from Alabama, so I got a Southern accent. I talk to my friends in the South every week, so my accent never leaves me. But when I used to be a trainer, I would neutralize my voice and have the newscaster's voice, speak very slowly and with articulation so that people would not focus on the accent. But as I got more comfortable with me, I realized this is who I am.
Yep.
And if a person really is going to build trust with me, I have to be authentic and show who I am. And that way I give them permission to do the same.
I love that, Bridget. And one of the exercises we do in our boot camps is actually to help people with their leadership profile. Who are they authentically?
Right.
And I love the ha moments where people are like, oh, wait a minute. You mean I don't have to be extroverted? I don't have
Right.
to be,
Yeah.
short and to the point. It's like,
Yeah.
no, own who you are, know who you are, own
Hmm.
it, and then share it.
Right. And part of owning who you are is not only knowing your strengths, but knowing your areas of opportunity and being willing to put forth the effort daily to work on that, right? We have to move away from thinking we got to be perfect, that we always got to be acting on 100. because not everything require 100. Some things are 70, right? But knowing when we need to escalate and when we need to de-escalate, and implementing that every day and focusing on being better than we were the day before. That's how we each move forward. But we got to own our stuff. Before a company invests in you, you got to invest in yourself.
I love that. And it is a journey. It's a continuous journey. You
Yes.
don't master anything, quite
Mhm.
honestly, because if
Right.
you, as soon as you stop, I think, then
Mhm.
you're becoming stale because life's
Right.
going on around you and you need to keep
Mhm.
learning.
Yeah. That's true. And you know, I mentioned to you when I was a kid, I had seizures from 3 to 12. I had what they call petit mal seizures. And once it leveled out and I stopped having them, I realized that I learned differently from other people. It take me a lot more steps to learn it, but
Hmm.
once I get it, I got it right. And when I was having those seizures and people saw that, they treated me differently for whatever reason. You know, this is around about 1972, so people didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
And it made me pay more attention to people. That's when I started being a people detective, realizing how the interactions and what they observed, engaged with me, could change very quickly.
Mm.
And so it made me be more mindful, and I pay attention to those nuances, those things that are not being said when I'm engaging with people. But it also reminded me as time progressed that I have to be good with me, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm looking at me and saying, Bridgette, girl, this is who you are. Am I proud of it, right?
Yeah. So, you talked about your vision. You talked about a young girl, some of the challenges you've had, the vision, that dream you had. What were some of the pivotal moments? So you were the software engineer, you went back at your HR. Were there some other pivotal moments that really helped you on your trajectory to being the chief people officer?
Um, what I'm going to share is on a personal note. My father and I were extremely close. And when he passed in 2003, I felt like a part of me went away with him, right? But then what I had to remember after having my moment of grief, my months of grief, I had to remember what he said to me. Not only to remember who I was, but he told me to decide what my values were and to live them no matter the reward or
Mm.
consequence. And when I was able to embrace that, despite him not being here, I've applied that in every aspect of my life. So it's not just one pivot. It's, you know, life happens to me. Sometimes life be lifing. You know, I've had a job where I was eliminated through a restructure.
Hmm.
And I had 6 weeks to find a job. I found one in 4 and had to move out of state.
Oh,
Right.
wow. Yep.
Those pivots sometimes in life that you don't expect, when you've been what you call a good person and life still happens, that's when you have to remember your values and your why. And that's when I have those things that allows me to pivot. I still hurt. I still wonder why did it happen to me? But then I remember who I am and my why. And when I leave this world, I want my legacy to be that Bridgette is a person that was authentic. She tried. She not only saw her potential, but she saw mine and helped me to believe in me. And that's what I focus on.
I love that. And having that legacy of, being able to know what you're aiming for and your purpose in
Right.
life is powerful because that's what gets you up every day, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because as you said, life was not a bowl of cherries. There were challenges.
Not, it's not, it's not. You know, ironically, my son told me that he Googled me. He Googled me last year. And I said, why did you Google me, Scott? He says, well, you know, I see you doing these podcasts and webinars, and I just kind of wondered why people listen to you. So I Googled you. And I said, well, Scott, you know, some people think I'm smart. He said, they do. You know, have a child if you have an ego. They will
Yeah.
remind you. What that taught me was that people observe you regardless of what you say, they're watching. And as employees or leaders, regardless of our level, they're going to remember not our title. They're going to remember the presence when we walked in the room. That's what walks in before our title. They're
Yeah.
going to remember how we treat them. And so that's one of the things that drive me in my legacy. I'm sure there are going to be people that say, you know, I ain't like her. But when they are being real about it, they're going to say, hey, I didn't like her, but I can tell you she was an honest person, that she was an authentic person, that she tried to help. And no, I didn't always agree with things that were implemented, but she put forth the effort. She put forth the action to bring about change.
I love it. And I can see just with the words you use, what you exude, the conversations we have, that's you're living your legacy now. And
Yeah,
that's a beautiful thing.
yeah.
And you're reminding me of a story where, someone that had worked for me and
Mhm.
hadn't spoken in a number of years, probably a decade. And we get on a call and he's like, you were the hardest boss ever. And he goes, but I loved it. He goes, I grew the most during that
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
And that is our role, right? Is to help
right.
people to grow,
That
because
is,
there's people I'm sure that challenge you, even beyond your parents, right? That
oh
challenge
yeah,
you, the
yeah,
manager that took you and said you should not be a software developer, right? An
right,
engineer,
right,
you should be. So, what are some other stories like that you have to share of who's
yeah. Well,
pushed?
I had a boss. My first corporate job, I was a recruiter. I had convinced this company called Airborne Express, is now DHL, to give me a job as a recruiter. I said, I can code, I can write a program. Give me an opportunity, right? And I went in there, and I've just really leveled up, and I got promoted 3 times in 3 years, right? I know that's unusual, but my first boss, it was her name was Linda, and she asked me a question about something that I'm supposed to be the expert on. And I said, well, Linda, I don't know.
Mm,
She said, Bridgette, don't you ever tell me you don't know. Say that you're going to look into it. I'll find that out. And when at first when she said, I'm like, I'm supposed to be honest and tell her I don't know. But what she was trying to teach me was put forth the effort to look into something. You don't have to know the answer, but say, I'm going to look into that. Let me follow up with you. Own that, and
yep.
don't make an excuse, because that's how she was viewing it, right? And
Mm,
so I don't mind if an employee don't tells me they don't know, but I want them to tell me what they're going to do to find out. If
I
you identify a problem, say, hey, Bridgette, this is the problem that I've identified, and this is my recommended solution. The other thing Linda taught me was when I would tell her, well, I've identified an issue, Linda. She says, okay, well, what you do to fix it? Right? She was teaching me, once I identify the problem, if it was in my scope, go fix it and then come back and tell her the results of it.
love it.
Those are the things that early on in my career that I've been able to apply throughout. And that's why I tell the team members that work with me, you the business owner, own your business. Come to me with your solutions, your recommendations, and how you plan to rock this out. And I'm going to be there as your partner. I'm going to be able to support it with senior leadership, because you owning it and I can own it too.
I love it. And that's the empowerment
Yeah.
of helping people really grow
Right.
and find their own voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about, was it Linda was your,
Yeah. Linda. Yeah.
right? So Linda's giving you advice, you've taken that and you continue to build upon it. And
Yeah.
that's what true leadership is all about.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So believe it or not, we're getting close to the bottom of the hour.
Oh,
So
wow.
I could talk for hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would your advice be, whether it's to your son, to other young professionals coming up? How can they really show up to be as strong as possible in the workplace?
Well, can I tell you a parable in answering that? Have
Yeah.
you heard the parable of 3 stonecutters? Well, the parable of the 3 stonecutters, this 3 stonecutters working on a construction site. And a traveler comes by and asks each of them individually, what are you working on? The first stonecutter says, I'm cutting stones. The second stonecutter says, I'm making a living. But the third stonecutter says, with purpose, I'm building a cathedral.
Mm,
So the point of that is look beyond the task and see the transformation. Regardless of what you do, you got to be building a cathedral. And regardless of your title, you got to lead with vision and humanity. You have to listen with care, and you have to rise with resilience.
that is fantastic. And that brings us full circle to
Oh,
the
okay.
wonderful world of Disney, right?
Yes.
And you having that dream and you making it happen. And said your success today of being the chief people officer.
Yes.
of people and culture. And, thank you for all that you do, Bridgette, because you are elevating people. You're not just focusing on compliance or things that are done. You are driving a business forward. And this is what HR really has the opportunity to do, is to drive change through the power of the people. So
Thank you.
thank you for all you
Thank
do. Thank you for joining us. You're fantastic. I'd love to have you back because we could talk about a whole bunch of
you.
other
Right.
stories. I love it. Uh,
Anytime.
Excellent. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us today. Please feel free to reach out to Bridgette or I if you want to network further. We'd love to learn more about where you are on your journeys. And if you'd like to learn more about E=Y, we'll put the links in the chat as well. So thank you all. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.